All right, let's do the damn thing. American Dream, episode 4. We got the honor, the privilege to have Rob Emerson on here, and I think this is going to be probably one of the most interesting episodes I've ever done, which says a lot. So, Rob, thank you so much for being here, man. Welcome aboard, and let's do the damn thing.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys for having me. Always down for interesting conversation, you know what I mean?
Absolutely, and I think you have a lot of interesting things to say, man, so that's very powerful. But before, we jump into that, I kind of wanted to talk about your background, your career, and how this whole MMA journey started for you.
For me personally, MMA wasn't that big of a sport back then. I did martial arts my entire life. I was too small for like football, soccer, and baseball and all that. So I found my niche in martial arts at 9 years old. Started doing Kyokushin Kai karate, which is a hardcore, like full contact Japanese style. A lot of good K1 fighters, kickboxers come from Kyokushin. GSP, one of the greatest to ever do it, was a black belt from Kyokushin as well. So that kind of gave me my background, as far as learning the athleticism in me, and also taught me how to be very tough. We did a lot of sparring with no gloves, but a lot of it's body shots. So Kyokushin is basically it's closed fisted, no gloves, but you can kick the head still.
Oh wow!
So yeah, it's very kick dominant, leg dominant, and you have to be a good athlete in order to use your legs and then be the dexterity, the flexibility, the footwork and all that stuff. So yeah, it's kind of a different rule set. It's no gloves, bare knuckle boxing or sparring essentially, and then all head kicks. So, but having training in a form like that from a young age kind of gave me like a hard-nosed grinder mentality. I would spar with all the adults and everything. And then after that, I got into Kaja Kembo, which is more like a Hawaiian grappling style. And then all my martial arts instructors, all my senseis kept saying, man, when you turn 18, you got to go train with this guy, Marco Ruas, and kept giving me, I remember the first time they gave me one of his business cards that said King of the Streets, Marco Ruas. And he was this legend from Brazil. And if anyone knows the old traditional UFCs, he was the first ever UFC tournament winner. So the first time the UFC did multiple fights in one night, he's the guy that won that I think he even beat Royce Gracie in that tournament as well. Yeah, so in Brazil he was known as the king of the streets. Everyone knows the Gracie lineage,
right?
But back in the day in Brazil where it all started, there was almost like two schools of thought. There was like gi jiu-jitsu, and then there was like no gi grappling, which is known as luta livre. So back in the day, there was like gym wars, literally like almost like gang fights between these gyms and these schools of thought. Just like in the Bruce Lee movies, and it was like luta livre fighters versus jiu-jitsu fighters, basically, gi and no gi.
Gi and no gi. Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of the luta livre guys trained under Marco Ruas and Ruas Vale Tudo style. So a lot of them did kickboxing and boxing as well. So they knew how to strike on the feet. That was their first line of defense. Well, in a street fight, there's no rules. So for a lot of luta livre guys would win a lot of these fights and basically beat down all these jiu-jitsu fighters and stuff like that. And so it's kind of nuts. It's kind of a old school, that's kind of like where the sport came from, And so I'm the first American to have a black belt under Marco Ruas, and the style that he taught was Vale Tudo. And so this is a Portuguese phrase that means no rules or no holds barred, essentially. I have it tattooed on my knuckles here, and which is kind of cool because I just recently signed with a new fight promotion management company, First Round Management, and they're going to try to get me into some bare knuckle boxing as well as bare knuckle MMA.
Okay.
So yeah, I have actually a bare knuckle MMA fight coming up, slotted for September 11th.
Oh wow, that's right around the corner.
Yeah. It's the second show they're doing. It's a Gamebred show, Jorge Masvidal show. They did the first one in Florida. So I'm supposed to fight on the September 11th card. They still haven't sent out the contracts or anything like that, but they made the poster and all that. And so I've been training, getting ready for that, which is awesome because it's an ode to like the original roots of MMA. Before the sport was called mixed martial arts, it was called Vale Tudo. You know what I mean? And so it's cool. It's awesome to kind of see the sport come full circle. And here I am 20 years later now as a pro and doing some bare knuckle fights. Like for me, it's a huge martial arts bucket list that I got to check off. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I mean, especially with having that foundation in an organization that's ran by Jorge, that's huge. It seems like the stars align perfectly, which is out of this world, man. Wow, I had no idea that you had a fight coming up.
Yeah. So that's awesome. And this is, I mean, that's as dangerous as it gets. It's as bloody as it gets. Bare knuckle boxing is very interesting. They're blowing up too, and they're getting a lot of fan base and a lot of support. But the bare knuckle MMA, man, I think that's truly as violent as it gets. That's like as traditional as it gets, and that's as real as it gets. You know, the rhythm is going to be different. Guys cut a lot easier with no leather, you know, no gloves, and even the takedown defense, just posting up in guys' heads, and you hit them from angles that necessarily wouldn't do too much damage with a glove on, but no gloves, you know what I mean? And I got some bony knuckles, and I hit pretty hard, so I think I'll fare well in the bare knuckle stuff.
Yeah, well, I've seen you throw in the gym, and you hit hard as hell. I mean, I don't even want to underestimate that. You know, with you being kind of in professional and having gloves and so on and so forth, and not being used to not using gloves and just doing bare knuckle, do you think that's something that will affect you, or do you think because that's where your core is, you won't mind it? Yeah,
not at all. I've been hitting a lot of bags and doing bag work with my teammates and stuff, just doing the wraps and then tape over it, so I'm getting used to the different range. It's like similar to practicing with like a softball, you know, all season, and going to a baseball game and having to play with a baseball. Just that difference in the size of the balls. It's still we're splitting hairs, but again, and fighting is a game of hairs. You know what I mean? So it's a big difference. So even just if you just kind of spar and always hit miss with like 16-ounce gloves, and then you go right to the MMA gloves, you feel like a big size kind of decrease, and you have to get used to that difference. So I have been lifting and hitting pads and with just wraps and doing a lot of bare fist and stuff as well. But I've also been like hundreds of street fights, and I've seen men wilt differently when they get hit. You know what I mean? Hit in the eye socket with a knuckle, or bust them open. They see their own blood. Guys react differently.
Right.
And when you've seen it over and over and over again, you got to kind of read people. You know what I mean? It's crazy. It's like an experience that there's no dollar amount. You can't learn it anywhere else. Only on the battlefild. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got to earn your stripes.
You know what I mean? Exactly. That's what it is. And you learn certain things about a human being and the way guys act and carry themselves. Even these guys that act all brave and tough and hard and in front of their friends, and you get them alone in a brawl, and it's just you two, and you see the fear set in his eyes. You know what I mean? And you've seen it, and you're just able to read bullshit in guys, and you know which guys are killers and which guys are all bark. You know what I mean? So essentially, it's like a psychology. You know what I mean? I'm fascinated with psychology. I've been obsessed with psychology since I was a little kid. Yeah, it's nuts. I used to like Tourette syndrome when I was a little kid, and I actually cured myself of it when I was a freshman in high school.
Wow.
Doing a meditation that my psychology teacher taught me about as a freshman that day, and I went back to home and applied it that day, and my Tourette syndrome went off like a light switch. I mean, I'll tell the stories. It's pretty fast. If I showed you footage of me as a kid, I used to click and twitch and spit. Like, kids used to pick on me and jump me and like spit in my face and call me Twinkie and Blinky and all this stuff. So going to school sucked. My parents would drop me off, and I'd ditch a lot of the time and go to my friend Brandon McCambridge's house and go play video games and hide out until he got out. But that day I went to school, and it was Psychology 101, and my teacher taught me that day about the power of the mind, essentially. And I went back and applied what he taught that day in school, and I pictured my mental disorder, as they prescribed it, just as like a big rope that was tied to a ship to a dock. And he said, if you can mentally picture a rope with a knot tied in it and have that knot represent any mental disorder, he's like, if you just mentally untie that rope and focus with enough intention, and that most mental disorders, when you untie that rope in your mind, that most mental disorders will dissipate and go away and never come back.
Wow.
They're severely diminished. Well, Tourette syndrome is a neurological disorder that affects the musculatory system.
Okay.
Right? So the fact that I did this was like beyond, like I was on every medication under the sun. This is like, again, 20 years ago. So they didn't really know much 25 years ago. They didn't know much about Tourette's back then. So I was on patches they would stick on me that were the release medication, pills in the morning, pills at night. And basically it was just turning me into a zombie. And
was it helping you?
No, not really. I mean, yeah, when I got off the medicine, my tics and spasms would happen like way more. But even when I was on them, my tics and spasms and all that stuff like kind of still happen. But the side effects from the medication, I would just be like kind of a zombie all day. But I went home that day, and instead of going home and eating cereal and watching like Home Improvement, I threw my book back down, and I sat there and just kind of focused this meditation essentially. And it took about 5 minutes, and I pictured in my mind just kind of undoing this knot and the rope representing my Tourette's, and I untied this rope, and I remember just having a visualization of it, and I remember thinking like, dude, I'm going to put all my eggs into one basket with this. I'm going to try it one time and one time alone. And I said, there has to be some truth to it if he's up there teaching all of his kids this, you know, because I felt that the teacher, Mr. Gunderson, was a good man, that he had a good heart, that he genuinely wanted to help us. And he actually loved his job. And he was one of the best influences as far as a teacher in my life. And so I'm like, okay, there has to be some truth to this. And I continued forward with the meditation and complete belief. And I remember standing at that rope, and then I even poured gasoline on the rope, and I remember lighting it on the fire, and then I kind of meditated on the flames of this rope as my mental disease kind of went away and kind of flamed out into oblivion. And then I remember sitting there looking at the rope of ash, and I went by, just kind of kicked the rope with my foot and dispersed the ash everywhere. And I just slowly opened my eyes, and man, 1 minute went by, 2 minutes went by, 3 minutes went by, 5 minutes went by, and I'm just like, is this real? Is this real? And I sat there for another 5 minutes, and dude, I just started weeping. I started crying because I'm like, wow, this, whatever it was, worked. It literally went off like a light switch.
This is the first time you meditated?
This is the first time I ever meditated. Wow. Yeah, crazy. I didn't know about it. I didn't really know about the power of the mind. My mom was born in Italy, so I was raised like hardcore Catholic.
Right.
You know what I mean? So all I was taught was to pray. I didn't know anything about meditation. I think the powers that be in these certain religious institutions paint a very a negative picture of meditating, you know, and they're like, oh, don't do that, it's weird, don't look at that. And man, it's a shame. Very powerful that we truly hold the power of life or death on our tongues, you know. And because I decided to stay and go to school that day, I received a gift from my teacher that he enabled me to heal myself. Well, that's priceless. He changed my life that day just from that one class alone. And it was nuts. My mom came home that day, and she's kind of crazy, wild, sporadic, like, you know, Sicilian lady. She's all washing the dishes and all this. And my mom, look at your son. I just kind of washing the dishes. And she's like, what am I looking at, Robert? What am I looking at? And she'll leave me. I have to wash these dishes. She kept washing the dishes. My mom, I put her hand on the faucet, and I shut the faucet off. And my mom, just look at your son. Just put your hands down and pay attention. Just tell me if you notice anything different. And yeah, she just started watching me, looking at me. And after a couple of minutes, no tics. And she just put her hand over her mouth, and she started weeping along with me. And it's just like, they still don't know, you know, what it was, but
wow,
you know what I mean? Crazy.
That's insane, especially because doctors tried so long to be able to help you out with it, and something as simple as meditation, which, like you said, gets shunned.
Man,
do you still meditate to this day?
I do. Not as much as I like, but I'll tell you this: when I do meditate, I see results. Like, crazy things happen. And now we're talking about the law of attraction and stuff here, different laws that govern this reality. And the law of attraction is a very real law. As a matter of fact, it's more real than the law of gravity. You know, gravity is pretty real, right? This laptop, this table, this chair, it's a tangible law. Well, as tangible as gravity is, gravity doesn't even fit the list of the cosmic laws that govern this solar system. It's wild. And
it's minor.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's seven hermetic laws, and I've been obsessed with this hermetic knowledge the last like 7 years, studying it hardcore. When I'm not in the gym, I'm at home reading all these books and studying alchemy and hermetics and just all of the works and writings of Hermes and Thoth. And essentially, it's knowledge from Atlantis and ancient Egypt and crazy, wild things. And
let me stop you there for a second. How did you get to that? I mean, you know, you've sent me a couple of videos, and I've tried to, you know, pick knowledge from left and right, but it seems like you have like a damn PhD in this stuff. You know, how did you come across this, and where do you even go to research things like this?
So the answer I give everyone right away with that, and the answer might be hard to grasp for those that hear it, but honestly, and I speak freely, and I speak openly, and I speak very humbly. Like, nothing I will speak about here today is ever to flex my own knowledge. Unfortunately, a lot of people that speak and share knowledge is sometimes they speak it from their ego, you know, because their ego gets satisfaction of, hey, look what I know. Look at all this cool stuff that I can share that no one else knows. And it usually comes across pretty unauthentic, and I pride myself in being organic, you know, and speaking freely. So all these podcasts, the ones we're doing today, the ones I do, there's no script. I just come here and I start talking and let it flow and let it come from the heart. So with that being said, to answer your question, my personal journey, how I got to this specific point, I can honestly say it's been guided. My journey's been guided, and by who or what, We might get on and discuss that here today a little bit, but it's fascinating stuff. Like I said before we went live, I was raised Roman Catholic, my entire life, and I think about the age 33, I started asking questions like, man, why are all these different countries and stuff going to war and battling and killing each other in the name of religion, in the name of God, essentially? That's not right. There's something getting lost in translation with all of this. Either they're all correct, and something's getting lost in translation because of the different cultures and language, or they're all correct, or they're all incorrect, and they're, there's it's just like a smorgasbord of all these false narratives. Well, from what I'm finding out is everyone's correct. They're all essentially praising, worshiping, acknowledging this same source, what they call God. And I just had questions as a young adult is, man, why? I want to put myself in these other people's shoes and research their knowledge, because I just know what I've been raised by my Italian mother, growing up in the United States from a westernized civilization. So with that, I've been given the white Anglo-Saxon version of the New King James Bible, which is most of the Christians' source of knowledge. And so I just had questions. I'm like, man, what about the Quran or the Kabbalah or the Hindu Bible? All these different Torah, all these different texts from all these different religions that had I was raised in a different country, maybe I would believe that to be the dominant narrative.
'Cause that's what you were taught.
Exactly. And so the decision to do that back when I moved out here to Arizona about 6 years ago, I picked the 5 top different religions, and I was going to immerse myself for a year in each one, and not say that I was a believer in that, but at least gather the knowledge and have an intelligent, a
foundation. Yeah.
Foundation that I'd already been on the side of the fence of like the Catholicism, the Christianity. So I wanted to kind of peer in and see what all these other guys were learning. Well, my decision to do that got guided very shortly and swiftly to Alchemy and Hermetics.
Okay.
And when I say guided, crazy things have happened. And crazy things and stuff I don't really feel comfortable talking about because it's so beyond people's grasp. So before I even talk about my personal experiences that might discredit things that come out of my mouth, which I don't want to do, we'll just speak on Hermetics and what this text and what this knowledge says. And it's just fascinating stuff. It's for sure knowledge they've been trying to keep from people, especially during the Renaissance era and when the Council of Nicaea took place, 325 AD, under Emperor Constantine's rule. If you guys haven't heard about the Council of Nicaea, there's not a lot out there on it, but it was a big turning point in the Christian narrative as far as, Emperor Constantine, the Roman Empire, gathering all the bishops from all the lands and gathering them and saying, because at the time, there are basically all these different sects, S-E-C-T-S, right? Sects of Christianity. Well, why is there all these different sects? They all should be the same house, the same narrative, the same. Why is there divisions between all these?
I've always wondered that too.
You know what I mean? Different bishops believe different things. They have different. Well, why is there all this different? There shouldn't be all this. It should be a lot more simpler than that. So, but because man has his hand in it, then things have been manipulated. You know what I mean? And so now all these different bishops that are running all these, they have their own personal agendas. And so all the different bishops that gathered together and came together, they all came with their own personal agendas, and they actually were even writing personal letters to Emperor Constantine, kind of talking crap on each other. You know what I mean? Trying to influence the emperor about whose papers he lets get inducted to the New Testament. Well, Emperor Constantine had a very simple solution for this. He just gathered up all the letters that he was given and he burned them all in the fire.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So,
powerful.
Powerful. But the most mind-blowing thing about this Council of Nicaea is the texts that they did not add to the New Testament. You know what I mean? Okay. Well, these are known as the Gnostic Gospels, the Lost Gospels. And within these Gospels are also found in the Nag Hammadi library in northern Egypt, along with the Dead Sea Scrolls. Well, there's the Gospel of Mary. There's the Gospel of Thomas. You know what I mean? Judas. There's a bunch of different books that are from these prominent characters within the Christian Bible that it's not added. Well, one of the main things that's very mind-blowing that a lot of Christian believers might not know about, in the book of Timothy, Jesus is recorded speaking freely about reincarnation. And so that right there changes the game, changes the narrative. Because from the narrative I was told about as a kid going to Catholic schools and Christian schools, and I used to run a Bible study at my house and everything. But the narrative I was always told was, to sum it up, we get 80 to 120 years on this life, and depending on the works that we do here, we earn a pass either to the pearly gates of heaven or the fiery pits of hell for eternity. You know what I mean? And that was the narrative I was told.
Options. That's it.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, okay, but now we're having this source over here where Jesus talking about reincarnation, which completely changes the game. And then I start learning about all this other stuff and about fear and where fear comes from. And you cannot honor fear in this life. You cannot honor fear. I can tell you right now that fear comes from a very, very dark source. And when you honor fear, whether it's a thought, whether you're driving down the road and something as little as, better put my seatbelt on because I don't want to get in an accident. Well, even that what if thought is fear, and you're honoring fear. And when you honor fear, you're honoring a very dark source. You know what I mean? It's a source that I would never honor. So I truly try to walk through this life without any fear. And
so essentially, you're trying to avoid attracting that fear, that negativity, or it just comes from a bad source.
Yeah, exactly. Well, now we're talking the laws on how the fear manifests. Well, the fear first has to manifest with your thought. That's where the first seed is planted, is thought. Because the first law of these laws I'm speaking about, if we'll just jump right into it, is these Hermetic laws. Well, the first law is the law of mentalism, right? And this is saying that this conversation right now, every memory that you've ever had, that I've ever had, that anyone listening has ever had, this has all happened inside the mind of what we call God or creator or source.
Okay.
Right? That this is all happening inside a conscious mind. And that we are like little mini minds inside the one great mind.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a completely different spin on what I've been raised as an you know what I mean, American adult. And it's wild. It's like you can capsule a wave, right? And take a wave and put it in a jar, but you can't call that wave the ocean, right? That wave is part of the ocean, but that wave is not the ocean.
Correct.
You know what I mean? But it's still part of the ocean. Well, in that same concept, our minds, our consciousnesses are a little part of a greater mind, a greater source. You know what I mean? And that's the first Hermetic law, is the law of mentalism, that all this, regardless of whether you perceive it as dark or white, hot or cold, good or bad, that's just a matter of degrees from your whatever perception. And it's kind of crazy. It kind of changes the game a little bit. And there's an old alchemical quote that says, "Rest assured we sleep in the bosom of the deep." Rest assured we sleep in the bosom of the deep. Well, the bosom of the deep is the mind of God, the abode of God's mind. And so if Hermes is there's truth in these Hermetic texts, and what he's saying about this is truly the mind of God, and this is the abode of God's mind, well, if that's the case, then truly, what do you ever have to fear? Ever, going forward from this point forward. We have no right to ever fear anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
And even one thing I agree upon in the Christian Bible, it says, we are created in His image. Well, now learning about all these Hermetic texts and everything, and I believe that line was meant to be, we are created in His image consciously, more so than physically, more so from the avatar perspective, because we know that God isn't just has 2 arms, 2 legs, and 2 eyes, and like us, that's beyond. Because now we're talking about incarnations and the bodies that we incarnate to.
So a mental reflection as opposed to a physical one.
Exactly. You know what I mean? So we're creating His image consciously as creators, so we're down here creating, like what I talked about, the law of attraction and attracting things and creating things. We're creating this reality just like God is consciously creating this reality with us. It almost becomes a whole never ending story kind of,
right.
You know what I mean?
It's building itself.
It's a very empowering way to live through this life. And the second law out of the 7 laws, is the law of vibration, the Hermetic law of vibration. And what's that saying is that every single particle that makes up this mind of God, what the CIA is calling a simulation, the particles that make up this laptop, the particles that make up this desk, this microphone, the clothes I have on, even the sounds that are coming out of my mouth, the particles that make up this entire reality, they're all vibrating, right? And quantum physics has
like
proved
frequency, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
So quantum physics has proved this with the double slit experiment, that before these particles are even being observed. This is crazy. If you guys don't know what the double slit experiment is, you guys have to go research this. It's basically what all quantum physics is based upon, is this experiment alone. And it's not a theory. I'm not saying double slit theory. I'm saying double slit experiment. There's a huge difference, right? Theory is a belief. Well, an experiment that has been proven fact is scientific fact.
It's been tested.
Yep. So scientific fact, these particles, before they're aware or not, they are in a complete different form. And this is driving the scientists bonkers, because they don't know how to explain this. But what they're learning is that these particles, these biophotons that they're studying, before they're getting perceived by these scientists, they're finding out that these particles are reacting as a wave or a vibration. It's called collapsing the wave function. Okay. So once this biophoton gets picked up by a human sense, sight, sound, or even a video camera, the particle collapses into a form that we call biophoton, that quantum physics can study. It's a photon of light. But before it was a photon of light, when all the scientists turn their back to it, it goes back to a wave.
Wow. And
this is, every particle acts like this right now that's in this room. And that makes up this entire solar system, that makes up the furthest solar system and the furthest universe. You know what I mean?
Holy shit. This is blowing my mind, man.
It is mind-blowing stuff. It's mind-blowing stuff.
Wow.
You know what I mean? It really is. It changes the game.
Now, this is so interesting to me, because you're tying in, I mean, we talked about multiple different religions, we talked about science, and, you know, it doesn't sound like you're a one-track mind kind of guy, right? It sounds like you're very open-minded.
For sure.
When you say God, right, because you referenced that multiple different times, it's not like some white dude with a beard in the clouds, right?
No. And again, this term God is a vocabulary word that we've used, that a lot of different cultures and civilizations have used to name or call beings, just beings that vibrate above us at a higher frequency than us. So I would never call the creator of this universe the mind of God. I never will call it God, because that's not that it's an insult, but we call other beings gods. We've called angels gods before. We have called other beings that just are here within the mind of God along with us. They are not the source of creation. They are creations within the source of creation, like you and I are.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They're part of the process.
And another part of the Hermetic narrative, this is also crazy, is that eventually we are going to incarnate into these beings that we perceive as angels from our perception now. Eventually, through the incarnation experience.
Which continues, right?
Yes. Well, not forever.
Okay.
Close to, but until we reunite back to the source from which we came.
Got it.
So, the Big Bang, hermetically speaking, it was simply a lowering of vibration. So source, and the Hermetics, what I'm calling God, or referring to as God, they call it the All, A-L-L, all capital letters, the All, because there really is no word that actually does it justice.
Right.
You know what I mean? We're trying to explain something, put something in a box that is so beyond our comprehension, so they just call it the All, because it really is everything.
So not limited.
Yeah, so like everything happening inside the mind of God, which is this conversation, every memory we've ever had, well, including every past life we've ever lived, is all happening inside the mind of the All. You know what I mean? So it's part of, he's part of it, and it's wild stuff, man. It's crazy shit. And then, so if that's the case, if we're incarnating right now as humans, and then you study neuroscience and look at how our DNA strands were literally spliced, rearranged, and fused back together, and then they had telomere caps put on the end of our DNA strands. Well, you ask any neuroscientist, and they'll tell you this happened abruptly in our species 200,000 years ago. This mutation to our chromosome 7 and 2, this mutation did not happen gradually through evolution. Something took place. There was a procedure that happened on our DNA 200,000 years ago. So our current race of the humanoid appeared on this planet out of nowhere abruptly 200,000 years ago.
Not something natural.
Exactly. Okay. So now who or what did that mutation is, again, we can go on for another hours just on that alone. But what Hermetic says is that with these incarnated bodies, we have certain potentials. We have gnarly potentials that we can access here in these bodies. And these are potentials that I believe that, man, they should be teaching in the school systems and the educational systems, the religious institutions. They're not teaching about this stuff. And straight up, it's the stuff that's depicted in like Hogwarts and like Game of Thrones and like Star Wars. The Force is very real. The scientific word for the Force is quantum entanglement.
Okay.
Right? Quantum entanglement proves that every single particle that we see before you is connected to one another.
Right.
The particles that make up this table, the particles that make up you and I, well, there's no separation between these particles and the particles that make up the sun from the furthest solar system and the furthest galaxy. They're all connected.
Everything on the other side of the universe.
You know what I mean? In a quantum net.
You know what's crazy? You're a former UFC fighter, a former Bellator fighter, right? Like you're an MMA fighter. Yeah. But I had this conversation with a neighbor of mine who has 2 PhDs, and this motherfucker is a genius, like on paper too. And it sounds like you kind of are on the same page as him. Yeah. But he said the same exact shit that you're saying, really? Which is blowing my mind. You know, this is all self-taught.
Yeah, it's no, I will never take credit for any of this. I can never. I truly mean it. I refer back to, I said this has been guided. My journey has been guided. By
a higher power, not an individual, right?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
A little bit of both. And the individual, I have the symbol of one of his pseudonyms tattooed on my face here, right? This is Mercury. This is the alchemical symbol of Mercury.
Okay.
Well, this is the symbol for spirit. So in alchemy, you have 3 symbols. You have sulfur, which represents the soul, right? You have salt, which is the salt of the earth, which represents this dimension, earth, the creation of God. And then you have Mercury, which represents spirit. So you have spirit, soul, and salt, right? And so spirit is like the mind of God. It's the in-between. And the soul is the souls that we incarnate to, and then the salt is where we incarnate to. You know what I mean? So right. Existence, all of reality can be summed up, alchemically speaking, into these 3 symbols: salt, sulfur, and Mercury. And so, man, it's crazy. The Romans knew Hermes as Mercury, and the Greeks knew him as Hermes. Well, the ancient Egyptians knew him as Thoth. He was even known in Atlantis before ancient Egypt. He was a king in Atlantis, known as Arlecvomalites. That's crazy. I have it tattooed here on my arm. And his title while he was a king in Atlantis was Cheketet. This title, Cheketet, means seeker of wisdom. And it's crazy. Atlantis for sure existed. It does still exist. And where we're sitting right now in Arizona used to be a main colony of Atlantis.
Here in Arizona. Where the desert is.
Trip out on that. I promise you that. I promise you.
No, that's insane.
So
wow.
The gnarliest archaeological discovery ever in North America happened here in this state. It took place in the Grand Canyon. It happened in the early 1900s, I believe 1902 or 1904. There was a temple of Isis discovered within the Grand Canyon. Well, what is an ancient Egyptian temple doing here in the Grand Canyon in Arizona? Well, it got forgotten about, and then later, I believe in 1940, around there, someone discovered was cruising down in his canoe down the river, and he refound it again. And this time, I kind of went viral. A lot of people found out about it. A lot of people try to go explore and visit this place, but it's kind of built in the side of like a cliff. So you go down a cliff, and the entrance is here. Then there's more cliffs. So a lot of people try to scale down to get into it and lost their lives. So the government actually put like I think a 10 to 12 mile restriction around. You can't even fly over it and take pictures. No drones or anything. So, but what is an ancient Egyptian temple doing here in Arizona? And I can tell you right now for sure that there's a link, a correlation between where we sit right now and Atlantis. Egypt itself, the Great Pyramids and Egypt itself was built upon Atlantean knowledge using alchemy. Well, alchemy comes from the same source as medicine. It comes from the same source as astronomy and psychology. And it comes from Hermes. It comes from Hermetics. You know, Isaac Newton was an alchemist before he was ever a scientist. He wrote over 1 million words on alchemy. But how come they didn't teach us that and tell us that in the school systems?
Right, they're leaving things out.
Yeah. People write off alchemy and say, oh, that's hocus pocus, that's bullshit, that's bogus. And a lot of people kind of talk shit to me online. Sometimes I get in little quarrels with these guys. They have no idea the depth of their ignorance. They have no idea. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's a reason why the global medical symbol is the caduceus. You go to any hospital in the world, in any country, and you're going to see the staff or the scepter of Hermes on that hospital. You know, why is that?
It's tied in with medication.
You know what I mean? Any intelligent person has to ask themselves, okay, what is this symbol that I see all over the world on every single hospital? Well, what is that symbol? Well, it's the caduceus. It's the staff or the scepter of Hermes or Mercury. Okay, well then who is Hermes and Mercury? Well, let's address that, and let's address the knowledge that he's left for our species and has continued to share to our species from many different lifetimes and avatars. Well, what he says about what medicine is, it is not the medicine that they're teaching medical doctors to this day. Before Big Pharma came around in 1904, Hermetic medicine was the medicine of our species. It was literally herbs and tonics and elixirs. Now it's chemicals, you know what I mean?
Right.
Which is undermining what we are as a species, and it's undermining Hermes and the knowledge that he taught. And so for that, I take it very seriously. And you know what I mean?
It's a strictly like naturopathic route.
Yeah, for sure. It's a spiritual path. So if you want to talk a little bit about Hermetic medicine, Hermetic health, well, the reason why these herbs are meant to be the medicine for our species is because there's a spiritual aspect to it. So getting back into alchemy, the mind, the human kingdom has a mind, body, and spirit, right? Well, this is also true for the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, and the mineral kingdom. There's a mental realm, a physical realm, and a spiritual realm for all of these different kingdoms. So when you pick up a plant, that plant, you're not just holding the physical body of that plant, but that plant has a mind and it has a spirit. When you pick up a rock or a stone, you're not just holding the body of that stone, you're holding the rock and the spirit of the mind and the spirit of that stone. You know what I mean? And there's even a science within alchemy called spagyrics, and it's the separation of the mind, body, spirit, separating them and then purifying them or distilling them. This is actually the first time alcohol got invented. It was the first time alcohol was distilled, was found by accident by some alchemists that were doing an experiment, and they were using alcohol to distill certain elements.
Wow.
And doing this, they found alcohol. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah, what are the odds?
You know what I mean? So the alcohol comes from alchemy. It's fascinating. It's things that people use every single day here have no idea how tied into alchemy and Atlantis and magic and all this stuff it essentially is.
I mean, this is the most in-depth conversation I've had about this ever in my life, and I've tried to study stuff that you've posted or like look into it, I think you do a great job explaining it because I don't really see, many people online or many sources for us to even come across this information.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is kept behind closed doors. Now we're talking about secret societies and stuff like that, and a lot of these secret societies and brotherhoods and orders, which I'm not a part of, so I'm free to speak about this stuff. But they keep it behind closed doors and they keep it amongst themselves. But for those of you listening, that if you have made it this far, I highly suggest that you guys research the Rosicrucians. Rosie, R-O-S-I, Crucians, C-R-U-C-I-A-N-S, Rosicrucians. This is the most influential secret society today. Many actively and for hundreds and hundreds of years. King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table used to have the symbol of the Rosicrucians at the center of their table, right?
So it goes back far.
It goes back far. So Isaac Newton was a Rosicrucian, you know what I mean?
Wow.
Shakespeare, who we have come to believe Shakespeare is not who we were told he is. Matter of fact, William Shakespeare is a collective of bodies. It's a collection of writings, or a body of writings. The majority of these writings were done by someone named Francis Bacon.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Okay.
There's even a correlation with Francis Bacon, another individual who I've been following his works for a long time, known as the Count of Saint Germain. And I post a lot on Saint Germain.
I'm a huge fan of him.
Right? And just go to Saint Germain's Wikipedia page, for those of you listening, and just go look at what it says about him. In his Wikipedia page alone, it says that he's lived over 500 years. Well, I can tell you now, he's lived a lot longer than that. Well, the importance of Saint Germain, you guys probably see his work everywhere you go. You've probably seen his day. When was the last time you've seen an American flag?
So earlier today, before I walked in here, yep.
Exactly. When was the last time you've seen a dollar bill?
Earlier today. Yeah.
Okay, so right there, the American flag, the original designer of the American flag, I'm talking the original sketch of the colonial stars in a circle, that was done by Saint Germain.
Oh, wow.
At the time, he was known by the pseudonym The Professor.
Okay.
Well, he was known by The Professor by Benjamin Franklin and George Washington. They both look up to this guy and revered him as a very intelligent knowledgeable man. And whenever Saint Germain said act upon something, George Washington and Ben Franklin act upon it immediately. Well, not only did he design our original colonial flag, but he also designed our state seal, right? And our state seal, that's also on our dollar bill. As a matter of fact, when you hold up the pyramid on the dollar bill, directly on the other side of the pyramid is the state seal. Well, what if I were to tell you right now that that seal is not an American eagle?
What is it?
That it never was an American eagle. It was a phoenix.
Oh, wow.
It was a phoenix, and it's always
have to go look at this
and it always
when we're
has
out of here.
it always has been a phoenix. So the original sketch of this done by Saint Germain is a phoenix. So what's the importance in that? What does a phoenix represent?
Rising from the ashes, right?
Exactly. Reincarnation.
Right.
Immortality.
Right.
You know what I mean? So who changed the tracks and why? You know what I mean?
So I have a question for you, because you posted a picture of him, right? On social media. And I come from Romania, so I have a similar background story to your religious one, right?
Right.
Almost the same exact setup.
Right.
When I came here, I met all these different religions, Muslims, Jews, different types of Christians, and I stumbled across a picture of a guy named Cesar Borgia. And I think we talked about that, right?
Yeah.
So why is this man, for people who don't know, Cesar Borgia was a guy that looked like what we believe modern day Jesus looked like, right?
Right.
And supposedly his dad was like a pope, and they wanted, anytime that Jesus was supposed to be painted, they told him, hey, paint a picture of my son, which is the same gentleman that you're referring to, who has changed his name throughout history, right? Or is that, I'm leaving out a lot?
That's what a lot of the signs are pointing to.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And again, I'm just regurgitating knowledge that I've gathered. But when I've seen pictures of Saint Germain, he looks also strikingly similar to the pictures I've seen of what we know as Jesus the Messiah.
Right.
Now, I don't know if there's a correlation there, but I also can't say there's not a correlation there. But I am following the works and writings of Saint Germain. And from what I'm finding out, and again, I'm going to speak freely this whole podcast because life is too short not to, but he's tens of thousands of years old. There's actually a reality show that he did in 1972. And on this, you guys can go on YouTube now and put up and watch it. Just type in Count of Saint Germain and just go reality show. There's a video of it. And on this reality show, he transmutes lead into gold.
Wow.
Yep. Shortly after the show, his Wikipedia said that he committed suicide. But they never found a body. All they found was a suicide note. Well, I can tell you right now, he didn't commit suicide. Someone that's been immortal and has been around for tens of thousands of years is not going to up and commit suicide out of nowhere.
He just made exits, or?
Yeah, it's he just goes into hiding, so to say, or just and again, now we're a little bit deep in this podcast, and now I'm starting to talk about things like immortality and speak freely. Well, when I say that word immortality, I mean real life immortality. It is one of our potentials that we can access here as humans, as incarnated avatars in the mind of God. And within the text and knowledge of Hermes and Thoth, there actually is a lot of writing about immortality. And there's ways we can access immortality. And the one main thing we can do to access it comes down to what we started off talking about this podcast with, is meditation and the power of the mind. And I'll just go and give you guys this little snippet on it. As above, so below. You guys have all heard this, right? And it's a famous alchemical slogan, as above, so below. You know, a lot of people hear that and they think all of a sudden that the above means like heaven and God, and the below means devils and below and hell. Well, that's not the case. The above does mean heaven and the heaven-born lands, and where God and these angels and these other beings reside. But the below is here. It's planet Earth. It's this realm. It's this room. It's this conversation. The below is the right now. So as above, so below. There's a connection here. And the connection, there's many connections, but speaking about immortality specifically, there's a correlation between your cells being the shape they are, a sphere, and this planet being a sphere. There's a reason for that. That's not a coincidence. And your cells have a charge to them. They have an electrical charge. There's a positive charge on the outside and a negative charge on the inside. I believe this charge can be measured at 1.4 to 1.7 hertz.
Okay.
Right? And you have trillions of cells. You know what I mean? So, electrically speaking, you have trillions of volts of electricity coursing through you cellularly right now. You know what I mean? Well, we are beings of electricity and magnetism by nature. So your cells have an electrical charge. Well, this planet has a magnetic balance, right? It has a magnetic north and a magnetic south pole.
Right.
Well, there is a meditation spoken about within these Hermetic circles that teaches one to program your cells to keep their charge. So you can look at your cells as a battery cell. And if you're always to keep this charged, then that battery is always going to stay charged. That battery is never going to die.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so there's a way for our minds to program and override our cells. What I'm learning about is it must have something to do with the caps that were put on the end of our DNA strands.
Which you were talking about earlier.
Exactly. So I think there's a way to override this mutation that took place in our species 200,000 years ago. There's a mental override program that we can access in order to take back our right being created here in the mind of God. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
but there's no proven way on how to get that figured out. That's still something you're in the process of.
We can access it. We can access it, and we can try it. We can implement it, and all someone can do is do this meditation. And again, it's not easy. It's not an easy meditation. It's something that takes practice, but it's all about mind power. And it says when you access this meditation, it says no sickness, no disease, and not even the fingers of death will be able to touch you.
Wow.
And so I'm not the only one with this information. There's a lot of other people out there with it. And I don't know how many are actually applying it. But I believe in the text and writing of Thoth and Hermes, and enough to get it tattooed on my face. And again, this all falls under the umbrella of human potential.
Right.
You know, immortality, human potential. And it's crazy. It's all fascinating stuff. So that's mainly what I'm a student of, is human potential. I want to know what we're capable of while we're here, and what I'm finding out what we're capable of is pretty fascinating. It's pretty incredible.
Removing limitations from what we're taught.
Exactly. Wow. And all limitations down to literal immortality. And I got to be careful with this. It's not immortality meaning for forever and ever, but it does say specifically until this planet fades away. Well, what's also spoken about in many different cultures and writings that were also found in the Nag Hammadi library, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, is writings on the planetary cycles. So this planet also has lifetimes, just like we have lifetimes. And this planet runs on 7 different manvantaras, they're called, or planetary cycles. There's 7 of them. Right now, this planet is on the 3rd one out of 7. Well, one of these 7 is 450 billion Earth years.
Wow.
One cycle.
Right.
Right? That's one planetary lifeline. And there's 7 of them. So 7 times 450 billion, we're on the 3rd cycle out of 7. You know what I mean? Again, I'm just regurgitating, sharing knowledge with you guys about what it says. So from my understanding, and I always say my uneducated understanding, even though I'm more educated on this stuff than anyone else I can converse with, but humbly saying my uneducated, position is that this immortality meditation allows us to stick around here during this planetary cycle, which is up to 450 billion years.
Wow.
You know what I mean? There's
a lot to go.
It's a lot to grasp. This whole conversation, we're covering a lot of crazy stuff, and it's a lot different than anything any of us have ever been told. And the best way to sum it up, they've never even made a movie that was similar to this stuff. But if you were to take up the narrative of Star Wars, of Game of Thrones, of Harry Potter, and Avatar, and like wind them into one badass movie script narrative, that's like what Hermetics basically is. It's crazy stuff. It's reality changing stuff.
Well, I think it's a lot to dive into when, I know you got a fight that you have to go be a corner for this upcoming weekend, so we don't have all the time in the world to finish it all here. I was wondering if maybe in the future we can come back. I can research some of these topics, and because I think we didn't even scratch the surface, right?
We didn't
as far as this goes.
We didn't even pick up the tool to begin to scratch the tip of the iceberg. That is a peripheral iceberg that goes to the bottom of the ocean. You know what I mean?
I'll bring you back up here as many times as it takes.
For sure.
I want to close out with talking about your fight that's coming up, and right now you're working with Jared, right, for his fight coming up against Calvin Gastelum this weekend.
Yep.
How are you, balancing the acts of training for a fight, hoping so? Is that typical in a fighter's life at this level? Being that high caliber, or?
No, from my position, I'm the only person that I know that is still competing actively and also being in the position of a coach of a very elite team, one of the most elite teams in the sport. And again, I hold myself as a teammate. I know the guys refer to me as a coach and all that stuff, but again, these guys are my teammates. I love these guys. Like when you're in the room sweating with these guys year after year, and you guys are just going through fight camps together, it's a bonding experience. If you guys ever been in a street brawl with your friends growing up, it's a bonding experience. You guys are like high fiving each other after you remember that for life. There's a special bond you get for like, fuck yeah, you had my back. Like there's some kind of brotherly love and bond that you guys share. So these guys truly are my brothers. They're truly family, and it's just a lot of fun. Like, yeah, I can break down, look at my plate, and be like, wow, there's holy shit. I have all my studies and stuff I want to learn and absorb as like the majority of meat on my plate. But yet, I also got to be a coach and help out these guys with their career and invest in them, and also for myself and train for all this. And so I don't even really look and see what on my plate. I just look at it as every day a blessing, and every time I open my eyes, it's like, what kind of great adventure is life going to take me on today? You know what I mean?
It's a beautiful mindset.
It really is. It really is. And then we just take that and that aspect of life and go through life as an adventure, as it's meant to be. We came here, we incarnated here to go on a wild adventure. We came here to fight evil, to fight the bad guys. And what Thoth says is our, because I get asked a lot, like, what does all that knowledge say our purpose for being here? Why are we here? Why did God create this? And what Thoth says in the Emerald Tablets is our reason for being here is to transmute darkness to light. To transmute darkness to light. And so you can take that and fill in the blanks with what darkness is, and on any degree, but that's the science of alchemy. It's transmutation, taking an atomic level of something and changing the molecular structure of matter, or changing the atomic structure of matter, and the transmutation, as well as the transmutation of one's consciousness and your mind. So it's all about transmutation, and that sort of reason is to transmute darkness to light. And starting off with your thoughts, right when you get to bed, we must manage our thoughts. We have to own our thoughts. The one book that I give everyone and recommend everyone right away when people are always asking me for book recommendations is I give them Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. The Power of Now will empower them and let them know in a very digestible form the power that they have once they gain their thoughts and they learn to manage their thoughts and control their thoughts instead of letting their thoughts control them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's super powerful. It dictates your whole life.
It is. Our brains are wired negatively. Ask any neuroscientist and they'll tell you that our brains are wired negatively. If you were just to jot down the thoughts that come through you at the end of every day, and then look at it at the end of the week and see negative thoughts as opposed to positive thoughts, these thoughts are just enter our brain. So we have to own the responsibility of managing which thoughts that we breathe life into and which ones we transmute into positive or into light or into love.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, I mean, when you take a bite of food, your body's doing alchemy right there. You're transmuting it and taking the nourishment you need and getting rid of the waste. So we are literally alchemical beings just by having this conversation alone even. You know what I mean?
Right. Man, this is some deep stuff, Rob.
Yeah, for sure. It's awesome. I'm finding more passion in this stuff now than I ever found in martial arts. And martial arts has been my life.
Right.
I've been doing this since 9 years old. I've been an MMA fighter for the last 20 years, and I've been on the Ultimate Fighter show. I fought in the UFC. I fought in Bellator. I get to travel the world, and as much of an adventure all that stuff is, I'm finding so much more passion and enjoyment in this stuff because this knowledge can benefit everyone that learns from it. And I don't know, man. I want to spend the latter years of this physical life encouraging people and empowering people. You know what I mean? And just transmuting darkness to light. That's what it's all about on any scale, and any degree. You know what I mean?
That's beautiful, Rob. Well, I know that you said that you're more passionate about this kind of, or it's at least transitioning to more passion than to MMA. Can you tell us, I know you said that the posters were made for your upcoming fight. Do you have a fight date? Where can we purchase tickets? Can we come watch it in person live? Is it pay-per-view? It's
so September 11th is the fight. Again, it's Gamebred Fighting, Bareknuckle Fighting. It's going to be on the same viewing apps and stuff as the BKFC, the Bare Knuckle Boxing. So Perfect. They all run in, they kind of run together. I think they're kind of sister companies and all that. So, and they even got a BKFC fight coming out here to Chandler, I think. Be excited. Chan Mendez got signed, is going to fight on there.
That's sick. Yeah, I saw that recently, actually.
It's going to be awesome. So, yeah, it's kind of cool, guys. So, it's kind of cool to see the sport blown up. But, yeah, tomorrow we take off with Jared for the UFC. We're going to take out Kevin Gossam next weekend. And that camp has been great. That camp has been, hands down, the most successful camp I've ever been a part of as far as seeing the work that Jared invested in himself and seeing the output that he got for his entire camp. With the rest ratio. So, as you know what I mean? Like,
right.
When he got so much work in every single week, every week he just kept getting A+, 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 as far as his performance when he sparred, performance on the pads, and then how much output he got for that week. And so he really did have the most successful camp that I've ever personally been a part of. And I think he's going to go out there and shine. And, man, the world's only seen, 40% of what Jared Cannonier can do. That guy is just a beast of a human being, and more so than his athletic skill and his bone density and his physical gifts is his mindset. His mind is so strong. He has such an iron mind, and I think it's one thing why me and him gravitate towards each other as well. It's just we get it up here, and we have some very, very mind blowing and interesting conversations. Me and Jared as well. But I'm excited for him to get out there and show the world what he can actually do.
Well, I'm excited for you guys, man. You know, the MMA Lab, there's not a gym that I love more in this world, so I want to see everybody win. I know, Jared's dark horse of the division. It's only a matter of time till he gets his title. Yes, I know you're going to fucking kick ass, and this is huge. I'm super excited that you got this fight coming up, because that's a huge organization. And when I saw that Jorge was doing that, I'm like, this is fucking pimp right here, man.
Yeah.
And, to know that you're participating in the second event, that's badass, brother.
Yeah, it's badass. I'm excited, man. I'm excited that, man, the UFC and MMA is still holding the torch, through all this, sickness BS.
The virus times.
You know what I mean? Yeah, the virus times. You know what I mean? So it's cool to see MMA and martial arts holding a torch as far as no fear. You know
right.
what I mean?
Rightfully so.
We started this podcast on fear and conquering fear and walking through this life with no fear. And I think it's interesting. It came full circle back to the fear thing, and that's what it's about: is no fear. And Dana White and the UFC did an excellent job as far as grabbing the reins and leading the way for all sports during all the lockdowns and everything. And he got a lot of slack in the beginning. How dare you do this? What if other people get sick? But look, man, everything was fine.
Exactly.
Everything was fucking fine. You know what I mean?
Well, Rob, I really appreciate you being here, man. American Dream Podcast, episode 4. I think this is, it has to be the most interesting podcast I've ever done. I've been doing them for years. So,
right on, man.
You're the absolute man. I hope that, that this went well for you as well, and you'll come back and deep dive into the rest of your knowledge here with us.
For sure, let's do it. I'll bring some books back next time, and we'll go through and systematically go through all the Hermetic laws and all that stuff, and man, we'll get this knowledge out there to those of you guys that are seeking. You know what I mean?
Let's do it, Rob. Thank you so much, man.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.
See you guys.